Hello. Well, good evening, guys. It's good to talk to you guys again. Um, Looks like we got folks starting to show up. I appreciate it. I know it was kind of short notice for tonight's talk, but always look forward to talking to you guys. Um, Okay, here we go. Sorry, a little technical stuff there, trying to get all set up for the event tonight. Awesome. Hello, Fawn. I'm glad you were able to join us tonight. Hey, Jason. All right, guys. Well, I guess to start things off, I want to talk a little bit about AFA Winter Nights in the Poconos. That happened back in the middle of October, and this was our 8th event for AFA Winter Night in the Poconos at the same camp at Camp Matimas in Pennsylvania. And what an amazing event! I'm impressed by them every year. Great event, good people. But what's really, really interesting is watching how it's changed and how it's grown throughout the years and how it's kind of developed. This year, it was very, very striking how many families there were, how many children, how many little children were there, tons of babies, multiple pregnant ladies. And something else that was really nice to see is, no offense to anybody, but a lot of good-looking folks, people that look successful, that have their things together, that are doing good things with their life and moving forward. And it was really nice to have that element there. Super family-friendly event. Like I say, it was amazing to see so many kids, so many little kids. And one of the things that's always striking to me about these events when we have the kids is they almost instantly they get together, they meet each other, and they go on like they've known each other forever. We get the older kids. Very often the older girls are taking care of all the little kids, taking care of all the younger kids, and it just organically functions very, very beautifully. It's absolutely the way things should be, and it's a really special thing. Hi, Nathan. Watching this over time, I've said this a few times, and I guess it's the old timer in me. But back when I joined Asatru, back when I joined the AFA, it wasn't like that. It was a lot of guys. It was a lot of folks that didn't necessarily find a lot of success in their life, and we're moving forward. And as a church and as a family, our folks are finding success. They're finding partners to spend their lives with. They're starting families, and we're seeing something really beautiful happening. So it was a privilege. Winter Nights was an amazing event. I'd like to give a special thanks to Cliff and Katie Erickson. They hosted the event. They did all the hard legwork. I say that they were assisted by their kindred, the Lansdale True Folk, and also by the Stoneship Hearth kindred out of Massachusetts. These guys all made this event work well, but Cliff and Katie, they were really the driving force on making this happen, as they are every year. So Cliff, Katie, thank you guys so much. You provided us an amazing time, very powerful weekend, and I'm looking forward to it again next year. Well, that's good to hear, Rob. We love having her at the events. I'm looking forward to seeing you and her. And okay, that's right. Maybe you can't make it out to Ostara this year. We'll see. But I'm looking forward to seeing you and your daughter at as many events as you guys can make it to. We love having you all there. Still got folks joining in tonight. That's good. I'd also like to mention a couple of things at Winter Nights. So at Winter Nights, we had the honor of oathing in. First, we oathed in Trent East as a full-fledged, oathed-in AFA folk builder. Trent folk builds in the Deep South region. Folk builds out of Georgia currently. and came to the AFA as a very young man, and he's grown with us and grown into the organization, into the church very, very well. He's done good things for us, consistent things for us. And one of the things that's really special about Trent is he's stood up to adversity. He's held his head high. He's proceeded with courage, with integrity, and he's really shown an example to a lot of people, a lot of folks much older than himself, of dedication and what it really means to be part of the Asatru Folk Assembly. And we were very proud to oath him in at Winter Nights. So congratulations to you, Trent. I would also like to take this time to mention the swearing in, the ordination of our newest AFA Githya. Katie Erickson was sworn in as Githya at Winter Nights. I had the tremendous privilege and honor of being Katie's mentor while she was going through the Gothar program. Katie is a fantastic addition to our Gothar. She brings years of experience, but what's more is she brings a heartfelt dedication, and she puts herself into all of the things that she does, be it ritual construction, or how she counsels, or how she moves forward and does things for both the Circle of Air, our AFA ladies, and the AFA in general. Katie has done an amazing job, and I'm very excited to have her all official, sworn in, and ordained as the newest Githya in the Asatru Folk Assembly. So congratulations, Katie Erickson. So how's everybody doing tonight? Anybody have any questions or anything they want to talk about starting out tonight? Yes, Rob, her ritual at Winter Nights was amazing. Looks like a lot of you really got a lot out of Katie's ritual at Winter Nights. Katie did an amazing Desir bloat. Like I said, she puts a lot of thought, a lot of heart into everything that she does, and worked out really well for our folk. Any questions? Anything you guys want to talk about tonight? If not, I got a couple more things I want to bring up, but I wanted to see if you guys have questions. After all, these are kind of set up in a question and answer format, and this is the opportunity to ask me anything that you want face to face. If you guys have any questions or anything that you want my take on, or you want to know as far as how the AFA's, where we're going, what we're up to, anything you guys want. One thing that I wanted to mention while I have you guys tonight, and I notice this all too often, and I like when the change from it happens, but just in a way people conceptualize. A lot of our members, especially our newer members, when they talk to me about the Asatru Folk Assembly or what's going on, they ask if there's ways they can help you guys. Hey, can we help you guys with anything? Hey, we'd love to join you guys for something. We'd love to, assist y'all in what you're doing or help you guys. Once you join the AFA family, it's not you guys, it's us. And I love when I hear that with some of our members for the first time, when it's not them asking how they can help us or help you guys. It's when they mention that they're part of us. Like, what can we do? How can we move forward? Because we're doing this as a family. And that's one of the things that I've tried to make a comment about lately. I think a lot of folks, especially when they join, if they're in the middle of nowhere or they're in an area that we don't have a really thriving group yet, they always want the AFA to provide them something. They want, what are we doing? They're now a part of we. So if you want to see things happen in your area, it's really important to realize that there's no magical AFA genie out there. What there is good, dedicated folk like you guys that step up that decide to host something or be a contact person in their area, or maybe even to volunteer to folk build. The AFA isn't some magical genie out west somewhere. The AFA is each and every one of us who is a member of our church, who wears the tri-horns with pride, who is a part of our family. That's where the AFA is, and I love it when folks feel that sense of ownership and they start talking about us. So yeah, I just wanted to speak on that briefly. Rob Stam, looking forward to the AFA Scally Cap. We're working on that right now. You may want to talk to Sean Sandin on that. He's the one handling that and making that get squared away, but I think we've got something really nice to offer you guys as far as that goes. Katrina, news on the Hoff in Minnesota, possibly in Minnesota. Yep, we continue to look. We've got one option we're very seriously considering that's a little bit further down the road in terms of months, not longer than that. But in the meantime, one of our members went and looked at another possibility of a Hoff property there just this last Saturday. So we've got one thing we've got one thing that's a very good possibility, and we're also looking for other things that may serve us better in the meantime. So we're continuing to look. We're being very diligent on it. Our folks are really putting in the effort to make this happen. So that is moving forward. Thank you all for joining us. All right, well, we have a very serious question. What steps should folks take if they are doxxed in their community because of their faith? And how does the AFA want folks to handle that? I would like to tell you guys that I have some great solution to that. Right now, I really don't. The world that we live in is a scary place. And right now is a really volatile time, not just in our country, but around the world when it comes to forces on the left doxing people or trying to damage their reputations due to their political stances, their political beliefs, and also due to our spirituality at times. I think that the best thing to do is to be proud of what you do and not to start backing down or start apologizing. I think that when you do start apologizing and you start backing down and you start acting shady or acting guilty of something, then you appear guilty of something. If you've done nothing wrong and you just proudly follow our faith and you proudly adhere to our values, I think holding your head up through it does a lot. I think not letting on that it's shaken you, if you're able, says a lot. I know that's much, much easier said than done. I think if the doxing is in the workplace, I would always use terms like religion and church if your doxing is related to anything that way. And those things are protected, and those things so far have been a very valuable shield to our people when folks want to maliciously dox. Most often what I find, though, is when people are doxed, it's not due to AFA affiliation, and it's very seldom due to their religious convictions. What it very often is due to incautious political posting or gratuitous off-color jokes and off-color memes that look really terrible out of context. So I'd advise everybody to tighten up on that. If it's valuable and you believe strongly enough that you need to say something, by all means, please do that and do it boldly. But be aware that the things that you say and how you present yourself in the world, it may come back and there's a record of it. So, as for any children that are listening, I apologize, but as folks say these days, don't shit post. When you post just to troll or just to get outrageous responses from folks, That's what I've seen a lot get people in trouble for as far as doxing goes. So that's what I'd advise. If it goes further and there's a legal concern, I'd ask you guys to reach out to our law speaker, Alan Turnage, and he might have some good advice for you. So yeah, please do reach out to Alan if there's a legal way he can help you. I think that's an important point you bring up, Jason. Finding work that you're not dependent upon a hypersensitive HR department is also a very, very important thing that our folks start to do when they can. And if you find that work, if you find yourself independently employed or in a position where you can do hiring and you can support the rest of us, please hire folks in the Asatru Folk Assembly. Let's all look out for each other when we have the ability to and the means to. If you're in a position where you can hire or you can contract out to folk, please try to look to the AFA first if you can. Going back over, so some of these comments and questions are out of order. I apologize. Asking as an ex-Christian, what is the AFA's take on the patriarchy? I don't want to be flippant with the answer because I do think it is a very important question and it was asked seriously. I think that using the word the patriarchy probably has a lot of negative connotations that don't need to be there and aren't relevant. As far as male authority and male leadership, the AFA is absolutely for it. And we are very thankful for all of the men who've taken a lead in Western civilization for our folk and our people to move us forward and to allow us to have the nice things that we have today. Our fathers and our grandfathers and their fathers, all the fathers that have came before them that have provided order and structure and that very important component to leadership and direction in what we do. The AFA really is in strong support of powerful male authority and powerful male responsibility. And we're proudly in support of that. Specifically, to put it in context, though, as an ex-Christian, the Christian idea and the Abrahamic idea in general of the patriarchy is very often male strength coupled with a strong dislike and a suppression of women. And I think that separates the Asatru patriarchy in that sense. For men to be strong and to lead and to be proudly masculine doesn't require the negation or the mistreatment of women, or in order to rise up shouldn't take holding someone else down. And that's certainly, I think, a distinct difference in Asatru versus in Abrahamic faiths. So, Gothi Blaine Qualls asks, how can folks donate to the HOF 2 Fund? So while we're trying to make this second HOF a reality, one thing that makes it much, much easier and much, much quicker to happen is you guys being willing to reach down and donate what you can. If you can donate to the HOF 2 Fund, you go to www.runestone.org. Go there and there's a donate page. On that page, you can select where you'd like to donate if you want to donate to something specific. Certainly to the HOF 2 Fund, but also if you'd like to donate to our Folk Services Program or to our relief efforts for folks that have been affected by the white genocide in South Africa. Sorry, guys, I'm just taking a look to read through the comments. You guys are asking some really good questions tonight that I think are very, very important. Well, Amanda, you being self-employed puts you in a much better position than a lot of folks when they're being persecuted. Again, I'd encourage everybody who can do business with you to do business with you, and I think that's a really good step in having independence and freedom that way. Um, Unfortunately, there's very little we can do to stop forces of cultural Marxism from unfairly and unjustly persecuting you and persecuting the rest of us. That's a very tragic statement about the times that we live in, but it's also something that I'm hopeful that that time will pass and that we'll find ourselves on the other side of it here at some point. I think maintaining our dignity and our courage during this time is extremely important. Like I said, I know that's much, much easier said than done, so please don't think that I say it lightly. Hello, Nicole. Welcome. I'm glad you could join us. Everybody, Nicole is new. Say hi to her. Hmm. Hmm. Thanks, Eric. It's good to have you here. Does anybody else have any stuff they'd like to talk about tonight, or anything they'd like to, I don't know, get my take on or get cleared up? To our previous conversation, I'd like to also add that our list of noble virtues is very, very easy to talk about. It's very easy to post memes of Vikings with axes and helmets looking savage and posting words like courage, like perseverance and fealty, not fealty, fidelity. Talking about those things is it's very easy when we put them in the distant historical past. It's very easy when we make a meme with folks that bear no resemblance to our everyday lives. It's much, much harder when folks have to live those values in their lives and have to stand by those virtues and put an actual consequence and a risk with them. And for you guys that do, for all of us who stand by those virtues and who hold up under pressure and under strain, I am so thankful for you guys. And I appreciate the example that you set for the rest of the folk. And we've got some very, very courageous, very steadfast, loyal folks. I say this all the time. We have the best people in our AFA family. We are all extremely, extremely fortunate for the wonderful folks that we have around us and the beautiful, beautiful family that we're building. So what else do we have going on tonight, guys? Like I say, I'm happy to take any questions y'all might have. Or talk about anything you guys might want to discuss. In the meantime, you guys may be gearing up to celebrate the Feast of the Einherjar in your community. For new folks or folks that might not be used to that, it's a celebration of our fallen warriors that have fallen in conflict for lots of different reasons. It's in the AFA, it's really important to celebrate our fallen warriors, and I know that sometimes there's controversy about maybe why they've fallen, but it's essential to celebrate the fact that men were and have consistently been willing to put their lives on the line for things they believed in, for causes, for country, for king, but very often just for the man next to them. Um, the bravery to test oneself where where there's serious consequence on the other end it's really an amazing thing. And all the respect in the world for those brave men who have paid that cost or who have put their lives in the balance um, for us, for their buddies, for our folk. We're very thankful for that, and that brings about a focus on sacrifice this season and something to think about. I think it pairs really well with the American holiday of Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is not a Christian holiday. It's a holiday for any of us that want to give thanks to the divine and to the others who've provided for us. And I think it pairs well with the Feast of the Einherjar. Taking a moment to celebrate and to enjoy and to feast, but to be mindful of the sacrifice that has allowed us to have the blessings that we have in our lives, the sacrifice that have paved the way for us to have all of the nice things that we all too often take for granted. So this month, as we celebrate, let's be mindful of that. Let's think about all of the things that have blessed us. Let's think about the gods that have blessed us, our ancestors that have blessed us, and those brave men that have created, built, and sacrificed, putting their lives in the balance for the things that we have and the things we take for granted, and who have since the dawn of our folk. So, hail the Einherjar. Bias, any tips on getting kin together and getting off the ground? I think the answer to that question is really different depending on where you're at and what your circumstances are. I would first advise connecting with your local AFA folk builder. They have a lot of resources. They may know about a lot of people near you, maybe even right next to you, but if not, within driving distance of you that may be very interested in anything you want to start up. Your local folk builder would be really happy to try to connect you with those folks. I would suggest if you're going to start hosting anything locally, but here's the thing, somebody needs to step up and host something. A lot of people want to attend, but a brave few step out and say, cool, how about this? I'm going to set up something. Let's see if people show up. What I would advise to start is setting a recurring monthly meetup, perhaps around one of our holy days. I think a really good idea is to do it around our days of remembrance, to set it up somewhere that's not a bar, not somewhere very loud, but what's called a pub moot. I would do that at a restaurant that you like going. I don't know your situation. I don't know if you got a girlfriend or a wife or a family, but I think that if you set it up to where you and your wife go to a restaurant, call it an AFA get together. If people show up, you meet folks and you have a great time. If nobody shows up, then you have a nice date night and you call it good. But the importance is the important thing to remember on it is the consistency. Very often people won't show up and then they'll regret that they didn't, and they'll be looking to show up to the next one. So I'd start trying to be very consistent with that for a while, but make sure it's not something that's going to stress you out. Make sure you're not hosting an event where you're putting, a lot of your own money into, some elaborate feast and booze and food for all these people, and then no one shows up. It's disheartening and it burns you out quick. I'd start small with some place you like to go, doing something you like to do. And if other people show up, great. When other people show up, great. And when they show up, things will snowball and you will build momentum. But that consistency is what's needed to get you through. All right, Ostara in the South. It's going to be in South Carolina this year. It'll be here before we know it. Do have a few months on that, but starting to plan now is really the thing to do. We'd love to see as many people as we can. It's going to be a great event. We're all very excited about it. I know I'm certainly excited to see you guys there, so do keep that in mind. March, I think while I'm talking, somebody can go ahead and find those dates and post them in the chat. But yeah, Ostara in the South, we would love to see you guys there. It's going to be a really nice time. Anybody who may or may not know, my wife and I are expecting a baby girl in April. Do we have names picked out? Yes. you guys can find out the one we choose in 9 days after she's born. But yes, we do have a name picked out that we feel pretty good about. Marcus, I want to make a real clarification here. I do not live in California. I live in the United States of America. I live in Reno, Nevada. So the folks in California, our folks are fine. As far as I know, our folks are all safe, and they're affected though. These fires in California are terrible, and they do hit very, very close to home. The Hoff is safe. The Hoff is doing well. It's scary because every time fires start happening, it seems like they get, within 30 miles of that Hoff. The Hoff is safe. One thing it's a defensible space. One thing that's really good about it is the local Brownsville fire department. They like to stage in the Hoff parking lot. So being it's a place that they can stage, and it's also some place that we volunteered to shelter folks if there is an emergency, I think the Hoff gets a little bit special attention and a little bit better taken care of there, which is really nice to have. 25th anniversary of the Asatru Folk Assembly is going to be celebrated all next year. Next year we will have been around for 25 years. The Asatru Folk Assembly in its current format will have been around for 1/4 of a century. That's a really big accomplishment and something we're extremely proud of. And next year is going to be a year of celebration of that. So please stay tuned and join us in celebrating that next year. Katrina, as far as the tradition of the baby naming in Asatru, the idea is to name a child after he or she has been in Midgard with us for 9 days. That gives a number of things to happen. Certainly in our ancestors' day, that was a certain amount of time to see if that baby was viable and if they could live on the outside. Also, it gives a time for the Norns, for our gods, for our ancestors to observe the child, for the parents to observe the child, and affix that portion of their inheritance to them that comes with that name. A part of our ancestors reincarnates in a way with that child, depending upon the naming. A part of our folk is passed on, a very powerful inheritance is passed on to that child upon that naming, when that name is affixed to them. Giving someone a name, naming someone has always been very important to our folk and has a very magical, metaphysical significance. Once you name something, it becomes real. Once you affix a name to it, you vocalize that, and we all vocalize that. It manifests something in Midgard, and it sets a degree of orlog for that child. So that's why we don't mention the name. We don't treat that like it's a real thing until that naming ceremony. And then we affix that orlog, we affix that inheritance, we affix that protection of Aphilgia and of our ancestors to that child at the naming ceremony. Faith, I'm really, really sorry to hear that. No, the various things you're going through would not prevent you from joining the AFA. If you'd like to join us, please submit your application. I'm looking forward to seeing it. And we've got some folks that you could talk to if you want to about some of the things that you're going through and dealing with. But no, please don't be scared of that negatively affecting your ability to join us. Please don't give that another thought. It's a good point that you bring up, David, and it's a good thing to talk about. Health and fitness should be very important to all practitioners of Asatru. It was very important to our ancestors. Um, it should be it is a religious imperative that we be the best we can be in all things that we do, that we be physically excellent, that we be mentally excellent, that we live to our best potential. We owe that to our ancestors and to our gods. Our gods want to be proud of us, and they want us to achieve heroic things. We need to do that from a solid base of health and fitness. Um, as far as making a religious imperative about hormone pumped meat or things that you're mentioning, I think there's some folks that like to have some in-depth conversation on that. I'm not ready to issue a fatwa against the hormones in cattle, but I do think that we all need to be extremely, extremely conscious of our health and fitness. Um, Part of our soul complex, unlike other faiths, is the body itself. This is part of who we are. We're not just an external soul that's in some kind of a meat sack. The meat sack's part of who we are. And it's a way for our soul to manifest who we are and how we present with our health, how we manage our health, how we look physically, how we're capable physically, and whether or not we're maximizing that speaks to our soul. So I think that's something very important for us all to be mindful of. Um, Jason, if you guys can see the questions on the side, our folk builder Jason Plurd asked a interesting question on how we can tap into the power of Balder, assuming that we're in an age of Balder. Um, I wouldn't assume. See, this is something I think is fundamental to what we're focused on in the Asatru Folk Assembly. I think that all around us, we're not really in an age of Balder. I think we're absolutely in the Kali Yuga. We're in a dark time externally, but internally within the AFA, it's the golden age, and we're going to embrace that full throatedly. I think that to invoke the power of Balder is to focus on hope, focus on dreaming, rebuilding, abundance, doing and creating great things. And I think that hope builds that. I think optimism, looking towards the future, looking towards what we can build, as opposed to lamenting what we don't have or things we see around us that we don't like. I think that's the key to harnessing that power of Balder figuratively. I think literally honoring Balder, giving bloat to Balder, building a relationship with Balder, calling upon Balder at your family altar, um, remembering Balder, spending your time building that focus through the gifting cycle, through the bloat cycle, putting that focus, putting your whole heart into our midsummer celebration where we honor Balder. I think that can invoke the power of Balder. But I think also learning from that example and focusing on hope, on positivity, and on building, um, on creating and rebuilding the things that we want to see, the things that are glorious, the things that are golden. Focusing on things that folks may have lost or things that we don't have, it's dark and it makes your soul dimmer. Focusing on the things that we can do and the things that we will do together makes your soul brighter and it makes it shine. And I think that's a way to honor Balder. And I think that's a way to bring some of Balder's power into our lives. Yes, Thorfest, a regional AFA event in Colorado, is going to be held in January. Um, Go out to Thorfest. It was a really nice time. The first one was this last year. We all had a great time. Love to see you guys going to Thorfest this year. So, as Jason mentioned, the registration is open. If you can go, you should. Have a couple different dates posted. Do not be confused. Rob is posting about Ostara in the South, whereas Jason is posting about Thorfest in Colorado. Congratulations, Eric. I'm excited for you guys. Updates on South Africa. No huge significant update other than our kindred, Volkswagen, is doing very well there. Those people are getting together more often. Um, in America, it's kind of tricky to piece together the geography of South Africa, but if you look at it, the population centers are spread out over a vast distance. So our membership there is split between now the words are not coming to me between Cape Town and the other one. Yes, it will come to me and I'll feel silly later in this conversation. But yeah, they're spread apart by a great distance. So we're building up a membership in both of the big population centers so that they can come together and get together to bloat and to do more things. That also goes with the planning and the implementation of our relief monies that we're sending. Okay, so we got a question that came in. Many of the AFA folk have a deep reverence for famous people that the public narrative has deemed evil or oppressive. Examples that come to mind are Christopher Columbus, Robert E. Lee, and certain war veterans of other countries. How far is the AFA willing to publicly go to honor these heroes? And are we better off honoring them privately to avoid public outcry? It depends. What we've focused on our days of remembrance are religious figures, folks who are being remembered by our church for their steadfastness to our gods and their contribution to our faith. I think some of the people that you're mentioning have made tremendous social contributions and are certainly folk heroes. And I don't want to deny them celebration and attention, but our big focus is on celebrating as the AFA the feast days for champions of our faith that have put Asatru to the forefront, that have built Asatru, that have, in the case of some of the older ones, that have died as martyrs of Asatru. And so that's really what that focus is about. I think that, while certainly the AFA will honor some folks outside of that context, I think that pushing it or making a big point of it sometimes, the juice might not be worth the squeeze and it might do more harm than good for us to do as a church, especially retroactively and rehashing old points of history. So I know that's not really a very firm answer for you, but it's just the thoughts that I'm having right now as you ask the question. But yeah, I would encourage you privately to honor any of those people that speak to you that have stood and been heroic and done good for our folk and made accomplishments for our people. And that's an interesting point as far as Columbus goes. Christopher Columbus is a hero and an amazing, amazing person in a lot of ways. He did an amazing thing. I know that it's very popular in some of our circles to Leif Erikson did it first. That may be, and that's fantastic, but I don't think that in any way diminishes the contributions and the pioneering spirit of Christopher Columbus and the voyage that he and his men went on when they landed in the Americas. I think that's an amazing thing that changed the shape of the world, that brought us, those of us here in the United States or in North America, or those of us in South America for that regard, over to this continent and lay the groundwork for us being able to be here today and world history in general. So I think that there's nothing wrong with celebrating Columbus Day. I know that I certainly am very proud of the work that Christopher Columbus put in. He wasn't an Asatru man, but he was a man of deep faith. He was a man with tremendous moral convictions. I think to retroactively looking back at history and try to portray him as some sort of monster, as the left does, or as somehow irrelevant because a Viking man 500 years before Columbus's time did something that Columbus had no way of knowing about. So I think that That's an interesting one. And because Columbus Day was so recently, it's just something I wanted to speak on for just a second. Awesome, Faith. Well, I look forward to seeing your application and getting it to your folk builder. Hopefully, we can welcome you into our AFA family here soon. Um, how can we help our loved ones that are joining their ancestors be welcomed in Helheim? So, a thought that I have on that is trying to think of the best way to put it. One thing that I think is very relevant is carrying on the cult of the ancestors after they've passed. I think that we can improve the lot of our ancestors wherever they end up after this life by honoring them and celebrating them, by speaking their name, by raising horns to them in symbol, by doing great things in their honor, by erecting, as our ancestors would do, erecting cairns on the side of the road, the sagas say. Doing things to promote their memory and remembering them fondly, I think that transmits something to the other world. I think by venerating them, by speaking about them to your family and to your folk, by keeping their name alive in a way that's honored and celebrated, I think that builds their reputation. And when we talk about how they're welcomed into other realms, it's way deeper than our human experience. I don't claim to know everything about the other side of the veil. But the best that we have very often when we're contemplating divinity or when we're contemplating the afterlife or the other world is to look at it through the lens that we have. And just as our ancestors, to our ancestors and to us now, reputation is huge. If you come to us with fame and with a name that we've all heard and we've heard your praises sung and we've heard great things about you, then certainly that makes me more inclined to welcome you. And I welcome you with a certain dignity if you're a hero that people have sung songs about. I think the more we can do to elevate the good name and the reputation of our ancestors, the better they are received by others, be them divine or ancestors or wherever they might end up. I think building their reputation and celebrating that reputation does have a carryover, and I think that's powerful. Johannesburg, there you go. Yes, absolutely. I feel silly not remembering, but yes, Cape Town and Johannesburg in South Africa. Thank you. Well, Fawn, we are all tremendously, tremendously sorry for your loss, and we are very those of us who had any interaction with you in regards to that are tremendously honored that we could be there in any way for for your family. Um, we're very, very glad to have you guys with us, and you are more than welcome. And I know on behalf of Brian, he is very honored that he was able to be there and help you. Same with Melissa, and I'm very honored that you reached out to me. We're really glad that you guys are part of our family. Jason, I think that's an interesting question. Jason asks, how should we take outsiders' views or historical record of our ancestors as far as what would, to what degree of credibility? There's thousands of different people that speak on different historical events at different periods and times from different angles. Some of them are our enemies and want to portray us negatively or our ancestors negatively. Some of them are our enemies and they want to exalt our ancestors and exalt things that they've done out of respect for an honored enemy. Some folk claim to be our friends and want to put their own political agendas on our ancestors. Um, some people who are our enemies want to put their own political agendas on our ancestors. I think the study of history is always going to be influenced by the historian. And I think that it's a tremendous challenge to sort through that And I think that the best we can do is, like I mentioned earlier, use our own perspective as a lens. I think people whose character we genuinely, have a trust for, and the more we believe in them as people, the more we can feel confident that their historical telling is correct, or at least correct to their knowledge. But I think that's always going to be a challenge. I think that'll be a challenge, 100 years from now, when people talk about us and the times that we live in. So I think that's a really interesting challenge. Something else, Jason, to that point, that I think is really interesting. When we read a lot of historical literature about Asatru, or about our ancestors that practiced Asatru, very little of it comes from Asatru practitioners. It almost always comes from someone on the outside, be they hostile or not. It comes from someone from either a different time period or from a different civilization that is going to have some disconnect as far as exactly how accurate they are with the information on our ancestors. And it's going to be how others saw us much, much more often than how we saw us. Very often in the writings, when we read about Asatru, we read about a historian's perspective on some bygone pagan religion that they don't have a connection to. So they write about it as a historical curiosity, and not as a living religion and a living faith. So that's an interesting challenge. Now we're getting in a day and an age where we have scholars who are Asatru writing about our history sometimes. And we're really fortunate when we can find those examples. So I don't think that answers your question in any convincing way, but I think that's the things we have to keep in mind when we're approaching that answer. Yes, we have one of our Brazilians joining us. We're very proud of our kindred in Brazil. We've got some very enthusiastic folks. For the first time ever, the AFA has a presence in Brazil. So I think that's fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. All right, guys, tonight has flown by. I got about 8 more minutes with you guys, and then I have one of my Witten phone calls that I need to be on to do the best I can to move the AFA forward in the directions that we're going. So I do only have about 8 more minutes with y'all, but if you guys have any last minute questions or any things that you want to hear me speak on or want to have me address, I'd love to take any of those for the next few minutes here. Mm-hmm. Oh, Eric, no thanks necessary. I love this. I look forward to it every month. It's absolutely great to talk to you guys. I genuinely love my AFA family, and this just feels like a really nice format. I can get questions, and I feel like it's without actually being there, I feel like it's one of the best ways that I can talk directly to folks. So I like this a lot. Thank you guys for being here. Connor, what needs to be done to join us? Go to www.runestone.org. Click the join button. Before you do that, read through our statement of ethics and our statement of ethics and our declaration of purpose. Please read those 2 documents and make sure you're in alignment with our core values. And if you are, click that join button, and we would love to see you apply. Travis, I'm looking at your post here. I'm sorry, it's taking me a second to read it. Oh, well, that's great. I'm born and raised in Alaska myself. I was born and raised in Anchorage. Your question is about How do we do as far as keeping racism out of the exploration and celebration of our heritage? It's a hot button issue these days that everybody's definition of seems to be really different from one to the other. The Asatru Folk Assembly is, I'm trying to think of the most straightforward and clear way to put this out there. We're not obsessed with racism like everybody else seems to be. I think there's far worse evils in this world. The AFA doesn't spend our time policing against racism, but AFA doesn't spend our time complaining about other groups of people. I think that the word racism is a really strange word because it means different things to different people. If it means, if your concern is that Asatru or the AFA in specific would promote any kind of negativity towards people of other races, then of course not. It's not what we're spending our time doing. We're not worried about other people. We're focused on good things and pride in who we are and what we're doing. If you're worried about what the left terms as racism, well, that's just about anything. So I don't know what to say in that regard. But no, the AFA and Asatru is not about diminishing other people. Like I said earlier, when it comes to the idea of patriarchy, the AFA, folks in general ought not to have to lift themselves up by tearing other people down. And it's just not our focus. We're focused on pride in who we are and what we're trying to build. So I don't know if that addresses your question. If you have something a little bit more specific, I'd be happy to answer that too. Oh. Grayson, I talked a little bit earlier about Feast of the Einherjar. I think to reiterate again in a couple of minutes I have left, it's a really important time for us to focus on the fallen and the men that have put their lives in the balance for many different reasons over eons, men that we may have known personally, men that our fathers may have known, men that have fought and died thousands of years ago. The fact that men put their lives in the balance for a cause they believed in, for their country, for their king, for our folk, or simply for the man next to them, is something worth celebrating and worth making note of, raising a horn of, and being thankful and in awe of. And I think we all need to be mindful and do that, and this is a perfect month to spend that time. Robert, you asked about an official AFA song. No, we do not, but I've got some folks that are working on that right now and have been working on that for a little bit. We need more music, and we do have some folks working on some AFA music. All right. Well, last question, and then I do have to go for the Whitten call. As far as ways of practicing our faith every day, as far as, not just on the holidays. I think we need to remember, first and foremost, and this is not a sexy answer per se, but it's something fundamental. We're not like certain Christians that are Christian on Sunday when they go to church and then they go, clubbing and doing whatever else they do throughout the week. We're Asatru no matter what we do. It's a way of life. Our ancestors didn't have a smorgasbord of religions. When someone asked who they were or what their religion was, they would have just mentioned what tribe they were from, because their religion encompassed their entirety of their existence. So we need to remember that we are Asatru when we work. We are Asatru when we're sons. We're Asatru when we're fathers. We're Asatru when we're brothers. We're Asatru as bosses. We're Asatru as employees. We're Asatru as folks on the side of the road, as drivers, as pedestrians. In all of the walks of life of what we do, we are Asatru, and we need to keep that in mind in how we carry ourselves, with a noble bearing, with a thought towards we are the sons and daughters of Odin. We have nobility within us. And we need to celebrate that and be mindful of it and realize the obligation that that carries when we walk through the world, when we walk in any spot in Midgard. I think that one thing folks do is they wake up with the Sigdrifamal prayer often. They will greet the sun in the morning as a first thing to start their day in a focused way on Asatru. Um, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that. Something other people do is they'll sing the Sigdrifamal. You mentioned music earlier, so something folks do in the morning is Hail day, hail sons of day, hail night and her daughter. Look on us now with loving eyes, waiting grant us victory. Hail ye gods, ye goddesses hail, hail the earth all giving. Give to us wisdom, grant us goodly speech, and hands to heal all of our lives. Thank you guys for indulging me with that. But that's something I try to do in the mornings to start off my day, acknowledging the holy powers. I think something else that I like to do at night is come before the altar, burn incense, light a candle, speak to the ancestors, give reverence to the gods. To open and close the day that way, I think does a lot to reinforce that. But there's many other things to do, and I'd like to talk to you guys a little bit more about that next time. Thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. Looking forward to talking to you guys next month. This has been great. I appreciate you guys showing up, and I appreciate you guys asking really good questions tonight. I hope you all have a great evening. Hail the gods, hail the folk, hail the AFA.